you fought with weapons, but how can citizens that don't want dictators in the world but do not dare get in the weapons to fight?
I find this to be, in the Arab Spring is something that we've seen throughout all the countries in the Arab Spring. We've seen them start from peaceful demonstrations, and we see the reaction from these dictators, and it's usually very violent. And it's only through this reaction that the people feel that they have no choice but to raise arms. So in most cases, I think in the Arab Spring, especially in Libya, it started as a mechanism of self-defense rather than to strike. And it's only then when they realize that there's no way back and they have to continue to fight, that's the way forward. So I do see that in revolutions in Libya, in the Arab Spring, that we did exhaust all the other avenues first. We tried the peaceful demonstration way. People came out and asked, called for change. That's what we heard on many of the streets. And we saw the reaction from the dictators, which was usually very bloody and very violent.
Going there, coming back and telling it. That's the way a journalist today in Granada entitles the article regarding your book. So what is the most interesting part of the process? Going there, coming back, or telling it?
I think every part of it is not just interesting but amazing in its own way, and its effect that it has on a man or on a person. I think the first few sentences of the book explain it a lot. I tried to explain it a lot that way, in the sense when I said two things have changed me as a man: becoming a father and surviving a war. And so, as many fathers would know, it's such a huge life-changing experience. And for that, and it would be on that level for me, the change that it creates inside a person, because not only do you transition to become the fighter that you need to be, but you also have to transition back to normal life. And this is it's not for the weak. You know, you have to be very strong-minded, very convicted in what you were doing in the first place, and then through that then make a transition back to normal life.
What would you say to those who say that violence generates more violence?
Okay, well, I've sat on a panel many a time, sometimes with peace activists, and sometime there was once I was put in between four pacifists, peace activists, you know, and they put me in there, and I was able to explain and that in the Arab countries especially that are under dictatorships, you're talking about people who are, you have to live in their circumstances. Like I lived as a child, I lived as a teenager, as a mature adult, and seen and witnessed the effects of these oppressive regimes. I mean, you could say, I don't want violence, but does that mean that you must accept to live a life of ignorance, to live a life with no health care, to live a life? And people did it for many years, for 42 years in Libya's case. 42 years people accepted this. They did ask for change in a peaceful way. Violence was brought to them. So the only way to defend themselves was through a revolution, an armed conflict.
Have you taken part in other wars as a fighter?
Well, in 2012, directly after the liberation of Tripoli, I went to Syria. And basically my involvement in Syria was not to take part in the conflict, but rather to pass on the very valuable knowledge that we had gained in the Libyan revolution. I mean, revolutions are not like conventional wars. So generals and commanders have a different aspect of looking at a war, whereas in revolutions you're talking about trying to contain and train free men, not men who have been spent decades of their life or years of their life being conditioned to the army regime. So with these factors and other factors like the flow of arms and how to arm these groups, we had very valuable knowledge that we had gained from the Libyan revolution being successful. And so we decided, myself and 30 of the commanders of our brigade in Tripoli, to go to Syria. This is at the time before the introduction of ISIS and before the introduction of the extremist groups, and to go to the northern region, which was a liberated, still liberated region from Bashar, and to help them train themselves to keep themselves liberated and to protect themselves from the clasp of the regime of Bashar.
What's your opinion about the current situation in Syria?
I'm in Syria now. We speaks for itself, really. It's a catastrophe of this day and age. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their lives. I did my best at the time. Even in Syria, I spoke to many media outlets, explaining to the international community as much as I could to help bolster and strengthen the Free Syrian Army, which was the moderate army made of normal men like you and I. These were not extremists in any ways. These were your doctors, architects, shopkeepers that had no choice but to lift arms to protect themselves. And I feel that the international community had a really strong chance to bolster and strengthen these elements so that they could protect themselves not only from the regime of Bashar and to rid themselves of Bashar, but also to protect their borders from any foreign agendas like ISIS and like other agendas. I actually spoke elaborately on that matter of the porous borders in 2012. And I said, the longer that the borders are left open, the easier it will be for anyone and everyone with an agenda. And this is what we see today.
Would you write, or do you plan to write more books?
I would like to write a book about my experience in Syria. I think it's only fair, even though it was a short time that I was there, a couple of months, but I think just what I witnessed in the difference of, my opinion, the difference just even between the revolutions of the different countries, although they're all thrown together as the Arab Spring, every country has had its own cause, its own effect and its own result. And so as we see in Egypt, we see a coup d'etat and a return to dictatorship. We see in Tunisia free elections and a new government freely elected. Libya, we see a struggle between the old regime and the revolution itself, and it's continuing. In Syria, there's another element which is much stronger and violent, which is the sectarian violence. And I think I would like to express that in a book and show what it was that I witnessed firsthand, how people could be so divided and so violent towards each other, and how difficult it will be to try and fix the social fabric of the country. Not impossible, but it will be a difficult task.
They say that Europe has become the posh district of the world and that they only want to defend themselves from the others. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think that there's been a different kind of reaction from Europe as far as the refugees. Are we talking about the refugees, from yes. Refugees? I think there's been a different reaction from different countries and also a different reaction from the people as regards to the people or the governments. I mean, in Ireland, I was listening to the radio recently, and they were talking about the quota that they were going to let in, which was a very small amount of refugees. And the radio show had caller upon caller of people saying, I will open my door to them, just let them in. And it kind of like reaffirmed my faith in the people, because if we were to go by what the government says, the governments have been very closed about this, you know. Some countries have opened their doors, some haven't. The treatment of some of the refugees is very bad. The reactions from some of the people, I mean, it's very sad in this day and age when you hear educated people from Europe say something like, you know, oh, how can you let these people in? They have smartphones and they have this. And my reply would be that these are people from a war-torn country, not from the 16th century. These are people that are from one of the oldest civilizations in the world, kind people, an educated people, an advanced country suddenly destroyed. And I just think that the media has a lot of responsibility in the mindset of the population. And even though the media mind at times does not do the right thing, people's hearts and minds, there are a lot of people out there that are still open and kind to the idea of refugees.
The public opinion, this is on the refugees again, of the European countries is very much divided regarding the measures that should be taken regarding the refugees. What is your personal opinion? What should be done with the refugees in Europe?
Well, I think the refugees, okay, they should be dealt. I think the problem, the source of the problem needs to be tackled and needs to be dealt with more importantly than anything else. I mean, Turkey is taking in over, I think, 1.5 million. Jordan is taking in a huge amount of people. The problem is not the exodus of people. The problem is the source of what is making these people leave their country in the first place. The problem is Bashar. He needs to go, and this will ultimately solve all the problems. I mean, why is Europe and America not doing more with the NATO to help solve the problem at the source? Then we wouldn't have the flow of refugees. But still, at the same time, I think the responsibilities should be met. Refugee camps should be kept up to as good quality as possible. I mean, we just have to see the images of immigrant families and children being drowned in the seas for it to hit home and realize that, you know, no matter what, these people should be helped. But in the long term, the source of the problem needs to be sorted.
When will the fight finish?
I think this is the only time that the word jihad could be used for me, because as we know, the original meaning of the word jihad is struggle. And we all have a personal struggle. This is what I class as the word jihad, not this picking up guns and Allahu Akbar and all the screaming. That's not the jihad for me. The jihad for me is my personal struggle every day. Now at the moment I find myself on a different kind of a platform, a different war that I'm fighting. I'm trying to do my best to advise young men not to get caught up in the propaganda of groups like ISIS and Al-Qaeda. I mean, like, we're fighting such a strong war now that I always say that if Al-Qaeda was the baby, then ISIS is the delinquent teenager with a smartphone. They're technologically advanced, they are infiltrating the hearts and minds of normal, decent, everyday young men. I mean, when I was a child, I would watch Arnold Schwarzenegger or Sylvester Stallone, and they were my heroes. These kids are watching these propaganda videos that are so high quality that they're looking at them like heroes. And so I think, like I said about the refugees, tackling the source, I think with the ISIS problem, it's the source that needs to be tackled, and stemming the flow of young men who might go for different reasons. Some might go because, yes, they are extremists. Some might go because, yes, they're brainwashed. But some might go because they're actually with good intentions to try and help the people, or, you know, look at people like me and say, oh, I wish I could do something like that as well. And when they go there, they find themselves in a different scenario, like something from an apocalyptic movie. They're scared, they're frightened. Then suddenly some men with black masks offer them a weapon, and they join them, and before they know it, before they even know it, they're a member of ISIS. And even though some of them have tried to escape and return, some of them have been killed. I mean, that is my battle and my jihad now at the moment.